There is, of course, mounting pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to secure a deal to release the captives being held in Gaza, so far resisting international pressure, of course, from the United States and from within Israel itself. Let's bring in Ori Goldberg, who's an Israeli political commentator. He's in Tel Aviv. Very warm welcome to you. So what I was saying there, with continued protests in Israel against Netanyahu's entire war strategy, political opposition hitting him harder than ever before, perhaps, the question is Netanyahu running out of road there in Israel?
It looks like he may be, but I would say that protesters are not demonstrating against his entire war strategy. I think that's an important thing to remember. The protesters, still, the great majority of them, are not calling for an end to the war. They're calling for a hostage deal. Netanyahu has managed to make it appear necessary for Israel's security that even if a hostage deal is struck, Israel could conceivably continue fighting. I would say that most Israelis want an end to the war, but are unable to articulate this in any sort of tangible fashion. So we're calling for a deal, and Netanyahu's obstruction of a deal is seen as proof of his personal malfeasance rather than the strategic difference with the will of most Israelis.
We understand the US could present a new truce proposal aimed at ending the impasse. Is there a sense now that Americans are perhaps shifting from talking to Netanyahu to talking over him?
Yes, there certainly is, and because that's what the Americans are doing. And even the Israeli media has played deaf and dumb throughout this genocidal campaign, is not talking about the fact that the Biden administration is not talking to Netanyahu or with Netanyahu, but over Netanyahu. As your correspondent said earlier, the notion that the Americans could work out a deal with Hamas would be almost destructive for Netanyahu, because it would both legitimize Hamas and present him as incompetent. That is where the great majority of the Israeli protest is now focused. There is an internal conflict between people who claim to support liberal principles, and that means calling for the release of the hostages and for a commitment to human life, against those who claim to support the goodwill of the state and the public in general. The truth is, I think most Israelis would like to see the hostages come back home, just as most Israelis are not necessarily opposed to a continued war with Hamas and possibly with Hezbollah. I have to say, I think the only real conclusion to this thing will come from the outside, if either the Americans impose a compromise or, some other international coalition, and only then will the Israeli public begin to consider acknowledging the results of Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza over the past year.
What does the fact that the Americans appear to be no longer talking to Netanyahu but talking over him, what does that say about American perspectives regarding Netanyahu's political future in the short run?
I think they think Netanyahu is at best a lame duck on the one hand, but on the other hand, I think the Americans understand that the Israeli public, while it vehemently dislikes Netanyahu, can't really envision an alternative to Netanyahu's strategy. Okay, that means the Americans don't want to talk to Netanyahu, not just because they think his days in office are numbered, but because they think the approach he is leading is one that has profound support throughout the Israeli collective. That means they're not just not talking to Netanyahu, they're not talking to Israel. And I think that's an important point when one considers Israel's future. At the moment, this campaign is over.
All right. Ori Goldberg, Israeli political commentator, good to have you on Al Jazeera. Thanks for joining us.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.